Education for Tuesday, April 7th at 12 in the afternoon. So I don't know that anyone has a flag. If you guys have a flag.
We do have a flag, and I think that we should probably do the Pledge of Allegiance. We can all right here. We have the American flag and the state of West Virginia flag.
There we go. All right, Dr. Manchin, will you start off with the pledge?
I will. I pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States
of
of America,
and
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty,
justice.
For all. Excellent. Best I've ever heard.
Very good.
Oh,
Hey, Mr. President, can you
Yes.
give us a minute to assure that some additional parties are on the line, including the media who had requested that they be party to this discussion? So,
Yes.
Todd, do we have a mechanism? Just ask.
Kaylee is on the
I
line.
think Kaylee's
Yeah,
out
I'm
there.
here.
Hi,
I'm here.
Kaylee.
Thank you.
Okay, so we sent this out to the media. Is the rest of the staff, Jimmy, you there?
Jimmy is there. He's got his microphone muted.
Yes, sir.
And Chris DeRico, you still there, Chris?
Let me call Chris. We went a little bit over on that meeting, so let me see if I can get him.
And Mr. President, the rest of the staff is here and ready to update the board on all the issues and have a regular board meeting. Give us 1 minute to just finalize everything.
Absolutely.
Chris is connecting now. Chris is on.
Chris, you there?
Might take him a second to get situated, but
Todd, how do you have like multiple frames on this?
multiple frames.
Yeah, like mine keeps on going to Frank and then it stops and now I'm looking at Gary.
It depends on who's.
That's it.
Yeah, it depends on who's talking and it's who's picking up. It'll switch.
Okay.
So see where you like we see you now because you started talking, so you came up in the corner.
Oh, okay.
Mr. President, I believe all parties are now involved, so we can, if you wish, let's start the meeting.
All right. So we don't have any special recognitions or presentations. I'm assuming we don't have any delegations. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. So this brings us down to superintendent's update. Dr. Manchin?
Mr. President, I have a couple of things that I'd like to get the board up to speed on. First of all, Todd, were you able to get the number? One of the major issues during this this virus pandemic, there are two major core thrusts that I think the Board of Education has been is responsible for, and I'd like to say that Harrison County has done an outstanding job with our staff. In fact, incredible. One is the online instruction. I know there were some issues, and I know Kristen brought it to our attention. I really appreciate that. The online instruction and our status, and we are still providing instruction to our students. I asked Todd to provide you some information as to the number of login, well, myriad of things. So why don't you give us that, Todd?
Just as an update, we currently have 9,166 active students utilizing the system daily. Now, careful with that number because we have pre-K and some of the different groups that may not necessarily be active users within this system that wouldn't count in that number. All principals are active, counselors, everybody's playing a part in this, which brings the total to over 10,000 users daily in the system. Course materials that have been created just since we started this on the 16th is over 102,000 different materials created in the system. Submissions from students, the numbers are just staggering. 214,856 just assignments submitted, which also includes tests and discussion groups and various assessments. And the total pages viewed throughout the system is over 3 million. And that's really just, again, since the 16th, which is just, it's numbers that's hard to wrap your head around sometimes when you think about it. But the system's really smoothed out over the last few days, actually over about a week. They made adjustments to the system to be able to handle load. We were having some issues when about late morning when the West Coast users would join in. It was bogging down a little bit. So we released some information on that. And matter of fact, the very next day it was smoothed out. So we knew we'd have some hurdles with usage like every company's dealing with during this time, but it has smoothed out quite a bit. That's kind of where we're at.
And I think it's excellent. You can take
Hey,
some
Dr. Manchin, I'd like to say, I think a big congratulations should go to Todd, your staff, and all the technology people for, for getting this online and, and getting the kids back in the mode of school. I know, all these kids are working, during the course of the day to get their assignments done. And I think that it's a great job done by Todd and your staff and like I say, the technology people, and my hat's off to them because they're getting it done.
Thank you. I agree 100%. I think that this is very good, and you guys have stepped up to the challenge to be able to handle it. The one comment I would like to make, and I've heard this from a couple teachers, is there's been some surrounding counties that have, for lack of a better term, thrown in the towel and loosened up on the restrictions of their students in regards to maintaining their capabilities or their ability to get enriched instruction. And I just want to make sure that we have a commitment and that you guys feel the same way that the rest of the board feels, or at least myself, that we're not going to kind of give up, that we're going to keep, as long as we can, offer the enrichment, we're going to do so.
Yeah, I think Dr. Manchin, he met with all of the principals several days ago when that came out from the State Department as some guidance for some superintendents to consider. And it was a really good conversation with the principals. And then, of course, that filtered out to the teachers that we are not among one of those counties that is throwing in the towel. We will continue and keep it rich and look at some long extended projects and extended deadlines just to keep kids engaged.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Yeah, I saw that West Virginia remote learning framework, and I was a little bit disturbed by it because it seemed like there were lacking, the standards were less than what we had already started out doing first. And it seemed like we needed to have some guidance out in our staff, in our field, as to what we were unified with.
If you follow the further disclaimer, after all, he said all that, by the way, it's up to the local county. So, which I thought was real good. But anyhow, I can assure you, and I'm speaking on behalf of our staff here, which Doug, your point was excellent. If you just put your arms around, we made a transition in just a couple of days from traditional instruction to online, and what you heard Todd, it's incredible, the transition. One, and secondly, the enrichment of the instruction, the engagement of the teachers and all that. It was really, really important. So we're going to stay on this. Something struck me funny, people. I'm sorry. All right. So with that
the only thing I'd like to say is, because I did go in and we had an in-depth conversation, and like I told them, and I'll say it again, it has not, when this all started, nobody was prepared for this. Mm-hmm. And even if we were prepared, we weren't prepared for the society consequences, like parents being on the computer, overusage of, the internet and all that stuff from everybody. So, I mean, this was just really something that hit everyone in every form. When I met with Dr. Manchin and Donna and everybody, my biggest concern was probably because of lack of usage of computers in a home, and also, internet services, was to be sure that all of our students had access to paper copies at their school, which was, I know has been taken care of, and I appreciate that very, very much, because then there are no excuses, no reason to drop the ball if it's there. We had several people say that they weren't being given paper copies, and they were correct. And Dr. Manchin handled them wonderful. So that was my one thing. The other thing that I don't know how this was implemented, you know, timing. People are getting on and doing their work at different timing, and still am not really quite sure. This is for my information only. What are our teachers' requirements? We had discussed like basically office hours or meetings by, like at a college. How often and when are our teachers available for our students?
I'll let Dr. Hagan and Mr. Poole both address that. They're both jointly working on it.
Our teachers are available daily. They are still making individual house calls via phone, via email, household to teacher and teacher to household. They are available during email hours and live grades. They do have some structured windows that they have communicated that. For example, you'd have several students who would be submitting assignments at 4 a.m. Just because of where they lived. That's when they could get the broadband connectivity. And sometimes they would get frustrated if the teacher would not reply at 4 a.m.
Sometimes that's just when kids are up.
That is.
That's really the bottom line.
And I don't think our teachers, I don't think our teachers should be available 24/7 either.
They are not, but I think that's the kind of what's the new normal all of a sudden is that they're answering emails at 12:30 at night because that's when their kids are wide awake and they're using these systems to contact their teacher, and they don't understand that barrier, and so I think they've had to kind of,
You should have the cat eye shit.
yeah, we need we do.
I will say that a lot of our teachers, when they first started posting, they started making assignments due daily. And they have moved out of that mode, definitely, as they've gotten some feedback and looked at some obstacles and reassessed their goals for their instruction. And they've been more fluid. To give you a couple of examples, several of our elementary schools and middle schools, they've communicated to their parents that assignments for the week will be available on Sunday evening at 6 p.m. And then they will not be due until the following Saturday at midnight. And so then that student and that family has all of that time to work around obstacles at home, such as mom and dad still working, or getting into the assignments or just, figuring out life at this time. And so they've extended those deadlines. They've gone into some really neat opportunities to collaborate with other teachers and combine assignments. Instead of multiple individual teachers making assignments, they are working more with their colleagues to combine those so that a student is just doing, one assignment that is more like a longer project that has an extended deadline. We also have several families that have reached out to principals and teachers and vice versa, and they've, just communicated their individual circumstances. And in those times, teachers have, waived and been very fluid with due dates based upon individual family circumstances at this time. We have a lot of first responders that their children are living with grandparents or aunts because they don't want to expose them to the virus. And so that's a whole other, obstacle that we have in that, grandparents are working with a lot of this instruction and may not be as tech savvy as parents. And so our schools are learning to be very fluid with that. And very understanding.
Well, I definitely applaud the weekly, like we had discussed. That was just too much. I also just want to give credit to our elementary teachers and kind of in our middle school as well. I think where a lot of problems came in with our teachers were, you have to understand an elementary teacher has to have something prepared for every subject. Where if you go to a high school student, they teach biology, all they have to do is one assignment, one lesson plan. And I think that's where a lot of the craziness started, with teachers and student, and high standards of having things done in one day when you're preparing all this for, 7 classes a day. So there is a big difference between our elementary and our high school and what the roles are playing in this. And I just really appreciate the elementary schools especially because once again, you have high school students that are obviously more tech savvy and they're on their own, where you have these elementary kids that were freaking out. So the simplicity has really helped from what I've seen.
And I can tell you from experience that these teachers, the elementary, the middle, and the high school, because I've got one in each right now, they are reaching out to my daughters. They are providing them enrichment. They are providing them assignments. You know, my fourth grader has had multiple conversations with her teacher, her different teachers that she has. So you're right, Kristen. The teachers have really stepped up, and I think you know, we should applaud the teachers and the administrators as well as Todd's group and Donna's group. I think everybody's doing a fantastic job.
I still think something has to be put out there that our teachers aren't available 24 hours. I really don't think that's fair. I think, you know, I know you said some have put like, you know, standard hours. I think that should be really pushed to keep some, you know, consistency in their schedule. I just don't think that's real fair to a teacher. If a student wants to submit an assignment at 4 a.m. or midnight, that's up to them. But to expect a teacher to answer, I don't know. I think that's a concern to me. Not that it's a problem, but I think really there should still be specific hours.
Yeah, a lot of our administrators, they have posted that on their Schoology messaging that goes out to all of their students and families as well. So yeah, they're asking for some grace and some patience on our end as well with that. But it's exciting to see the collaborations and how it's evolving. It is.
Do you have any? Go ahead, Dr. Mason.
Mr. President, and well, we appreciate the job that everybody's doing and the teachers and everything. And I know the board is appreciative of this. And when this is all said and done, perhaps we can show our appreciation. I've got a couple ideas, but let's get through this. One of the other highly visible, and this will be, Mr. President, this is probably the only the remaining superintendent's update, are the facilities as it relates to the feeding program as well as the school building authority, where we are with that. Chris DeRico, you there?
I think he's on.
Hey, Chris. Well, regardless if he is or not, Jimmy, you there?
Looks like he's on mute.
Yes, sir.
Hey, I want to say for both Jimmy and Chris DeRico, the job they have done through this whole program of make sure we feed. Again, you talk about the transition on the curricular side. How about the transition of feeding anywhere between 5,000 and 7,000 people a day over these last several weeks? And what a job they have done. And I think it's a very altruistic way of addressing the needs of our students. It's highly visible. I would suggest to you that this week, which we've already talked about, Chris, you there yet? If not, we will get through this week. We're continuing to feed hot meals and all that. Starting next week, starting next Tuesday, we will start our program of multi-day, but it'll just be on Wednesdays. So if you get any questions, and it was in the news, we were able to get that information out on a myriad of ways that we get our information out. But one thing that the board needs to know is that starting next Wednesday, a week from tomorrow, we will be giving multi-day, 5 days per child, which includes a half gallon of milk, as well as 5-day provisions for each child. So if there's 3 children, if a mother comes or an adult, responsible adult comes in and says, I have 3 children at home, no questions asked, we will provide them 3 5-day packs.
Yeah, but do it on your phone. It's not, there you go.
Okay. And one other thing, and Chris, I was just giving the board up to speed on the feeding program, which by the way is highly visible, and I was singing your praises as well as Jimmy Lopez's for the job you guys are doing on that. And I think the board has a pretty good update. One of the things I was going to tell them, Chris, is that we have ordered 3,000 meals. We're going to see how that works and for distributing next Wednesday, and that will be 1 week. So we'll see if 3,000 is enough, That may be too many, that may not be enough, we'll see. Chris, you want to say anything about the food distribution?
No, outside, I think you mentioned everything. We're ready to go. The food will arrive at our warehouse on Tuesday. We're going to get most of it out Tuesday to the schools, ready to distribute on Wednesday. There's a couple schools we will distribute to on Wednesday morning because of capacity issues. But I think we're ready to go.
Quick question.
Well,
When
I wanted to
pick
say
back up
thank you, because
daily?
I know these kids.
I'm sorry.
Go-
When will we pick back
go
up
ahead.
daily after the spring break?
I'm sorry, Frank, Mr. President, what was that?
Will we pick up doing daily again after the spring break is over?
No,
Food distribution?
it'd be one day, just go ahead, Chris, and kind of,
Here's what we're doing. On Thursday of this week, we are handing out basically 3 days worth of food. That's Thursday, Friday, and Monday.
Mhm.
Tuesday, we will be also handing out just 1 day's worth of food. On Wednesday, April the 15th, we will begin handing out 5 days worth of food once a week.
Okay.
So every Wednesday, we are scheduled to continue this process and distribute 5 days worth of food every Wednesday.
Okay.
Hey, Dr. Manchin,
yes.
do you think, if we're going to hand out 5 days worth of food, should we not call maybe some of our cooking staffs from each school or each area
Well-
out to help to put all these, boxes together? I think it's going to be hard for, a head cook and one other one or whatever to do that. I think, should we not bring them, since it's only going to be once a week, should we not bring some of our other, kitchen personnel in to work,
I'll let Mr. Dorico address that. Chris,
Here's a little more details. We are receiving these. They're actually in bags, and the bags are fully assembled, ready to hand out. The only thing we have to add to it is the milk. And unlike handing out the half pint little boxes, we are ordering half gallons to be able to distribute at one time. So basically, every student is entitled to a bag and a half gallon of milk. We will have a cafeteria manager at each location overseeing the process, organizing things, and then we will have volunteers, just like they have been, distributing to the parents/students.
And this really goes in line with the governor's designation as Harrison, Mon, Kanawha, Jefferson, and Berkeley counties as, I guess, essentially hotspots. This is, we're doing this with abundance of caution for our employees to assure that they are safe. We're really concerned about this. They're saying the peak perhaps, and who knows exactly, but the peak next week. And for that duration, we probably will continue along this path. As many counties have already started a couple weeks ago. We've been able to provide daily hot meals, but we're really concerned about the welfare of our volunteers as well as our cafeteria managers. So it's with that in mind is that we're going to be instituting this starting next Wednesday, and probably, Doug, through the remainder. We will continue to monitor that we do have enough volunteers. We've had a number of people who wanted to volunteer. We'll see how that goes. If not, we'll continue to man it the best way we can.
Okay.
And as far as additional people, we'll
Thank
do
you to Mr. Dorico and his whole team. I know these kids, they depend on this food, and if they're not being fed, their minds are focusing on their hunger, not on their schoolwork. And there's so many kids out there, and who are suffering and who are being fed now because of the work that you and your team are doing. So I just want to say thank you so much for that. And
yeah, if I could say something real quick, and I understand I had to step away there and grab a phone call because I am at work, so I don't know if it's been addressed. But as bad as we need to continue to serve these meals, just from stopping over there with Dr. Manchin one day at Nutter Fort, our volunteers are there because they want to be there, but they're also scared. So we have to find a way to make this more sustainable So I applaud the once a week, as long as we get them the food. I don't think we can continue to serve hot meals. It'd be great to do that, but I'm real worried about the risk to our employees and to the volunteers.
Well, I think you're I think we just addressed that were you there for the 5 day? We talked about the 5 day, one
Yeah,
day.
I think we have to do that. You have to find something that's sustainable in the long run, because you're going to, what happens when we get one person who's become infected that does those meals, and then we've got really bigger issues. Plus, as we're on, some of these folks are going to start getting scared when they've drag it into their house, and we may not have anyone. So it's a lot easier to go to a 5 day or a 7 day plan now, because we're going to be there anyway.
And that's an excellent point. We saw that, and we're prepared to start Wednesday.
Well, I might also just as a prime example, and don't take this negative, but like one of my tenants used to get $60 a month for food stamps, and he got 190 this month. So a lot of these people are doubled to tripled in the thousands of dollars of food stamps to go buy food. Not that they should be at the grocery store, but just so I mean, there's definitely, they're being provided for through the food stamp system or the SNAP system. Very well.
Yeah, I think that.
I mean, that's a lot of extra money. That was just for one person, $60 to 190 for one person. So, I mean, I know these people are going to have access, and I think this is the safest thing we could do are these box lunches.
Yeah. So, Mr. President, there's just one other thing. Jimmy Lopez, Mr. Lopez?
Yes, sir.
You want to give the board an update with the SBA and I know we're doing some things and where we are with the facilities?
Yes, Dr. Manchin. Currently, the Lost Creek Elementary School project is past the schematic phase and is moved on to the DD phase and is being reviewed by the school building authority at this time. So we're hoping, if everything goes smoothly, that we'll be able to bid up and hopefully go to bid by June, and hopefully begin to break ground, if we're lucky, and everything goes well, before the end of the summer. Most likely being mid to late summer.
Hey, Jimmy, I know, looking at online, there is a dramatic drop in prices of lumber and building materials right now with everything going on. I mean, is that something that we could take in consideration when we're building this? I mean, is it I'm seeing drastic dollars off
Well, we know
different pieces of lumber.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
No. I'm saying it's amazing when you look at the stuff.
We're hoping to take advantage of the opportunity to, get this thing bid as low as possible with the materials, the material cost, but also, some of the contracting. So that's why we're really getting a push and trying to stay forging ahead with, the phases to get this school built.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. Good job. And handling the facilities around the county. We have, I think, generally pretty well buttoned up. Everything's closed. So now we're in for the duration. We'll see how long this thing lasts. But I appreciate the job you're doing, Jimmy. And I do want, before I close here, this staff, I know you've said it, and I know we've done it, but has done an incredible job. It's like a family. We're all here together. Sometimes we get tired of each other and tell everybody to get out, but everybody's worked incredibly hard. And I think that the taxpayers of Harrison County, I think they're being served well in this Board of Education. Can take a lot of solace in that. So, Mr. President, that's it for me with the superintendent's update.
All right, thank you. All right, this brings us down to new business. Is there approval? Is there a motion to approve the already instructional and diagnostic platform?
Did you consent items, Mr. President. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, what's that?
Consent items.
Oh, yes, thank you for the consent
Yeah.
items. Is there a motion to approve consent items as presented?
So moved.
Mr. Hoag has made the motion to approve the consent items. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Hamrick has seconded the motion. Is there any discussion on consent items? No discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Now we're down to new business. All right. Is there a motion to accept the quote for continuation of iReady instructional and diagnostic platform for grades K through 8 as recommended?
I'll make the motion.
Ms. Messenger has made the motion to accept. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Mr. Hoag has seconded the motion. Is there any discussion? Other than my kids are going to hate me for voting yes for this, I think it's a good idea. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item B, adoption of driver's education textbook. Is there a motion to accept the adoption of the driver's education textbook as presented by the superintendent?
I'll
So
make the
moved.
motion.
Ms. Messenger has made the motion to accept. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Hoag has seconded the motion. Is there any discussion? No discussion on the adoption of driver's ed textbooks. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item C, approval of the 2020-2021 Harrison County Schools calendar. Is there a motion to accept the adoption of the Harrison County 2020-2021 school calendar?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Hoag has made the motion to approve. Mr. Doherty has seconded the motion. Is there any discussion?
Just that, kudos to, Donna Haig and everybody that worked to put it together. I think it's a very good calendar, and I think that it'll be one that will help us in the future to pattern after and, you know, kind of keep it within that context for the next several years, rather than having us change the calendar drastically every year. So I think that, the work that she's done was very good.
Very good. All right. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Calendar is adopted for 2020-21 school year. Item D, recommendation for architect of Gore Elementary project.
Mr. President, after interviewing and reducing the number of applicants to 3, shortlisting and the consensus of the selection committee recommends McKinley and Associates as the architect for the Gore Elementary project.
Okay. So at this point in time, I'll accept a motion to approve the recommendation of McKinley Architects and Associates for the Gore Elementary project as presented by the superintendent.
So moved.
Mr. Hoag has made the motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Hamrick has seconded the motion. Is there any discussion? No discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Old
Hey,
business.
I'm not sure when, I wanted to find out more about like what we were looking at for Wilsonburg, possibly moving the instead of using Adamton, going over there to Wilsonburg. Have we looked into that, or I know it's past that?
We have
Superintendent
been.
is up.
I'm sorry, Michael.
Go ahead, Dr. Manchin.
We have, and unfortunately, we were just, opening up the discussion. It's probably going to require, if this board so desirous, is some additional design professionals looking at the facility. But based on our early discussion, and interacting with the board as well as the faculty, I think the recommendation will be the Wilsonburg for the new United High School. That's very tentative. It's going to require us to get an architect. It's going to require us to review the facility itself to meet the certain needs, the unique needs of this United High School. But Michael, yes, we have discussed it. And at the appropriate time, I'm going to bring it to the board to get an architect to help us design and do some work over there, or at least some recommendations to meet those unique needs of the United High School. So in answer to your question, yes, it's still on the table.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Are we going to do this quickly?
Yep, we are going to call for, well, the mowing bids for Harrison County Schools is up next. Is there a motion to approve the mowing contract for the Harrison County Schools?
Mr. President.
Yes.
Mr. President, if I may, what we have here is the mowing has started under the old contract. I just want to make sure the board is aware of this. And they're mowing as we, well, I don't think as we speak, but they're mowing. Well, what I'm going to make a presentation, and if the board is desirous to enter into that contract, I guess we can entertain a motion to that effect. And there's nothing that these individuals can't, but because we've already put this on the table, it is to adhere to a 2-year contract based on the already bids that have been submitted. I'll entertain any discussion.
Yeah, I feel that we should.
I thought we were just extending their 3rd year and going at this next year.
I'm sorry, Kristen, what was that?
I thought we were just keeping it the way it was for the 3rd year and revisiting the whole thing in the fall.
Well, that was the discussion, but after some discussion that the people have already submitted their bids, and the necessity of having to go back and do that again, I certainly can be open for discussion.
Submitted bids.
Pardon me?
Only 2 people submitted bids.
No, that's not correct.
I thought the one was rejected.
Well, they submitted them, but they
There
weren't.
were 3 companies that submitted bids, 4 companies, 1 being rejected.
I don't think that should be extended for 2 years because like we said, one of the biggest problems was the pesticide inspection. I mean, I just thought we were just going to let it ride right now for that 3rd year and revisit and redo it in the fall.
That's what I was.
I don't see putting another 2-year bid in there.
Now, what we're
In
talking
essence,
about,
if we would let it ride in the fall, they would have to and go out to do another rebid, then they would have to rebid and the prices would probably be substantially more.
I thought he just said he was going with the, I thought he was going with the bids we just received for 2 years.
Yes.
that's correct.
At the end of this year.
At the end of this year, that's correct. That is correct.
I'm not in favor of rebidding, sending out the bids again.
No, and I'll make a motion that we accept these bids as submitted to us. The bids that were accepted and suggested to us, and for this contract to go into effect after this mowing season.
Let the record reflect that, Mr. or Angela.
Okay.
All right, Mr.
So
President.
for 2 years though,
But
but for 2 years,
Yes, that would
The
be.
motion's been made. Is there a second on the motion before we open discussion?
I second it.
Mr. Hoag has seconded the motion. Now we can open discussion.
oh, okay.
Mr. President and members of the board, it is my understanding, and here's my recommendation, that that we enter into a 2-year contract to keep the 3-year cycle still with the ability to renew at the end of the 3rd year or the 2nd year. Yeah, you renew. So that this contract that they would that we're voting on would start next year. They're already in the 3rd year of the old contract, so we're good this year. This would be a 2-year contract with an option for a 3rd year.
1 year.
The 2-year contract. So, Mr. President, that is my recommendation.
So this is a 2-year contract.
Yes.
Okay.
I thought we were going to try to do it year by year. So that was my understanding.
Well, no, we lock them into a 2-year contract. Next year concerning what they have submitted. They submitted a contract, and that your vote will accept the contract that was submitted several weeks ago for a 2-year contract. Question?
Okay. Is there any discussion? Any discussion on this?
I mean, I don't know. I just still felt that the reason why our bids are so high is because you have prescription lawn cutting service that is the only one with a pesticide license, and where he used to share it with Four Seasons, but now he's not. That's why his bid was rejected. Kind of looks like we have one person calling the shots with a pesticide license, and I think pesticides should be taken out, and you're going to have 10 people put in bids that are more competitive. I mean, that's my feeling on it. If you ask any single person that came to that meeting, they'll say because they don't have a pesticide license. And like Joe said at the meeting, that's going around one time. And I think we should bid that out to a pesticide company for that one time. And then you'll have a lot more competitive bids instead of one person with a pesticide license controlling them.
Yeah, but I think the problem is that there were no people with pesticide licenses that bid.
That's right. Prescription does. Prescription has a pesticide license and they share it, which is in the RTF. He used to share it with both of the other companies. Well, he's not sharing it with All Seasons anymore. That's why his bid was rejected. He's only sharing it with Evergreen. And so he has eliminated every single bid by doing that. And if you take the pesticide out, you're going to have 10 competitive bids. And it's a one-time thing.
According to the results that they gave us at the last special meeting, the bid contracts were awarded to Evergreen Lawn Care. The brush hogging was awarded to Harris Lawn Care, and Prescription Lawn Care only received Bridgeport and the Shinston area. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but did Evergreen not have their prescription or their license, Jimmy?
Yeah, Evergreen, yes.
Pesticides?
Everybody had what they needed all season. In talking to Joe, All Season did not have a copy of their pesticide license, and they did not use the proper bid form. And that's what threw them out. And I don't know if Christina Gosselhart's on here, but that's my understanding. There was also another company from Upshur County, and I'm not sure the name of the company, but they also it was also thrown out for technicality.
Everson Carr is what I'm looking at from the last meeting.
Okay.
No,
so that was.
To spray.
I think the playing field was level.
Yeah, there's a list on the last meeting that we attended, Kristen. If you'll look at the mowing results, there's a list, and it says right there, everything from W9, WV96, purchase affidavit, all the way down through proof of liability and insurance, business license, herb and pesticide applicator license, and all three companies have that checked off.
No, Frank, listen, you aren't understanding what I'm saying. And if you look at the RTF, Christine went through this with me very clearly. Only Prescription has the pesticide license. And according to the RTF, they are allowed to subcontract that out, which is what they did with our current contract. They allowed All Seasons and Evergreen to use their license on the bid. And what they do, what they pay Prescription to do it, both of those companies, who knows, that's between them. So what I'm telling you is Prescription is controlling all this because they are the only one with a pesticide license, and they are sharing it with two companies. They are no longer sharing it with All Seasons. And so therefore his bid was thrown out.
Seasons isn't even in the picture.
I know, for the new one, and neither is any other company that was there because they don't have pesticide license. And
Can
prescription
I,
is
uh,
sharing it.
clarification.
Can I interject just one thing, please? I'm guessing that All Season or this company from Buchanan or any of them could have piggybacked and utilized a licensed sprayer that they could have just brought in. So, I mean, they still had that opportunity is what I'm guessing. This first time I've been around when we've bid these out. But I think that is the case is they could have used anybody in the area that for the pesticide spraying. The problem is All Season didn't submit a license from a pesticide licensed pesticide sprayer. And I guess you are right, Kristen. They do use prescription.
Yeah. So he's controlling them who he gives it to.
But I think they could have used anybody, and I think All Seasons could have used anybody. And I'm not really familiar with all these people that own these companies, but I think it was a level playing ground the way it was bid. From my perspective and looking at it, not knowing any of the people or personalities involved.
All I'm saying is we have 4 licensed companies. Christine actually gave me all this information. That's why I know it. We have 4 licensed companies with pesticide, which is Henry Lawn Care, Prescription, Mountaineer, or West Virginia Green, and I forget what the other one is. But anyway, we only have 4 in the whole county. And it's up to those people if they want to share their license or subcontract. Well, what happens, and that's a big thing to share. So all I am saying is, it wasn't on the RTF that these companies had to have a pesticide license, and it's a one-time application, you would get a lot more competitive bids. Right now, you're right. All Seasons and Prescription told All Seasons he's not going to share his pesticide. And you just said it. So his bid was thrown out along with all the other people. There were like 12 companies there. I think she gave us the slip. And nobody could bid because of this pesticide license. And you have Prescription saying, well, I'm only going to give it to my buddy. And then you get together with, you bid this and I'll bid this because nobody else has my license. I'm not going to share with anybody. All I'm saying is pesticide shouldn't be in there. It's a one-time application, and it should be bid out between those 4 companies that are certified, not subcontracted out. And then you would have 12 people bidding on the mowing and not be automatically ineligible. Right now with the pesticide, out of those 12 companies, every single one was not eligible to bid except for Prescription. Prescription shared their license with Evergreen. So there you sit with 2 bids and 12 people, no chance because they don't qualify.
I'd like to interject. We could sit here and debate this all afternoon, but I think that, we finish out the contract to the end of this year. We've already put contracts out and it's been voted on. Whether somebody wants to share their license for herbicides or whatever, that's their choice and they're right. I think that we award the bid for the next 2 years. And then when it comes up after that, then I think that we take a look at a new job description and bidding process going further or going, down the road further. But I think that what we've done is we put it out, it's been bid on, and I think that we need to go ahead and take a vote. Everybody votes however they want.
I only want to add to that. First of all, gas prices have gone down almost by half, and the buildings that are being mowed have gone down. But because the license wasn't shared, their new bids went up. I'm just saying that I'm fine with it going out for the 3rd year, but I really think that, I'm against going another 2 years knowing these circumstances over one little single thing, a pesticide license. So I'll vote no on it. But I just think it should be rebid in the fall without the pesticide, and you're going to save a lot of money for the county.
Call the question.
Mr. Hamrick has called for the question. We've had discussion. All in favor of accepting the bids as presented by the superintendent, say aye.
Aye.
Any
No.
opposed?
No. And no.
3-2, motion carries. Bids are accepted. This brings us down to personnel matters. Is there a motion to accept personnel matters as presented by the superintendent?
So moved.
Mr. Hamrick, or Mr. Doherty has made the motion to accept the personnel matters. Is there a second?
Second with the discussion.
Mr. Hoag has seconded the motion. Is there any discussion?
Yes. This is for Mrs. Stutler. I asked a question in regard to football coaches and all. Was you able to find out if they moved up in classification, if that's what allows them to have more coaches, or how many coaches each school is entitled to that we as a county, compensate for? And also, the second part of that question is there, it understood that we have posted a freshman job at Robert C. Byrd, but if there is no freshman team, like any other school, if there's no freshman team, and there's not a schedule of full complement of games, that there will not be a need for a freshman coach. Is that the understanding that I've got from the time we've been talking about this?
Well, you had asked me about the RCB coaches, and I went back and looked on the agenda, and those are just ones that we're refilling that were already there. They're not new positions. And you're right, they did post for a head freshman football coach, which
Right.
they've had in the past with Bridgeport High. They both have had freshman football coaches. And your question about them going up, they're not going to quad, they're going to AAA, correct? Bridgeport.
That's correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
AAA football.
AAA in
What do you
football.
call it? Basketball.
I think
Well,
Doug thought, I think Doug, when we talked earlier, you thought football was going to quad
True.
for Bridgeport and
There is no
RCB.
quad for football.
Yeah, so, but it's just, that was basketball. So I think that was part of the question.
Okay. But how many coaches is each school allowed based on their size? How many coaches are we to compensate, say at Robert C. Byrd, since they're the ones that's pretty much on the agenda? Is it one head coach, 2 assistants, one head coach, 3 assistants, one head coach, 3 assistants plus a freshman, if they have a freshman team and they do play games? I mean, they can make a schedule, but if they don't play the games, then it's really not a freshman program.
Yeah, I talked to Jimmy Lopez. We were looking at the coaches at each of the high schools and did a breakdown of them. It's not in code or policy, really. It's just, I mean, I've got a breakdown of what each high school has, if you're interested in that. I mean, Bridgeport and RCB currently really have the same coaching staff. I mean, they have the same numbers. Bridgeport,
As they've had in the past 2 or 3 years, correct?
yes, it's been the
Okay.
same,
Okay.
except for Bridgeport has an assistant freshman
Mhm.
football coach that the other schools do not have.
But I think it's paid, isn't it paid by the boosters or something?
I don't think so.
I spoke
think so.
to Matt D'Amato on that issue, and that's, I believe, paid by the county.
Yeah,
The assistant freshman job.
that's the only job that's different really than in all the high schools, is that one at Bridgeport High. Yeah.
Okay, so, all right, so nothing's changed. There's no coaches been added. It's all the same numbers.
Yeah, all these jobs on this current agenda were just SSAC renewals
Okay.
and putting them back on the agenda. There's nothing new been created.
Okay, all
They
right,
won't have
and
the past.
we are going to follow the guidelines, though. If the freshman teams don't have a full complement of schedule and play freshman games, then there's not a need for a freshman coach, correct?
Nope.
I don't
That's
think.
not how it goes, Doug. I went through it last year. Not how it goes.
Yeah, I don't know that we've ever done that.
Nope.
Well, I thought that was the way.
Either
to
hired.
look at it.
Yeah.
Nope, you're hired for a year, whether there's a team or not. That's what I said last year. And we went through this whole thing. How many freshman teams were there last year?
One. Just one at Bridgeport High, I believe.
Same as the last 10 years, Doug. But yet we keep on hiring a freshman coach. Just saying.
Correct.
It's not right. It's wrong. It should not be labeled that. I don't care if you say another assistant, but you're paying more for a freshman coach. We go into contract right now. There's never a team, and it's just wrong. I mean,
It's paid less.
I'm saying you could pay for a coach with no team, knowing this after a 10-year period.
They make more, less though.
Who?
A head freshman coach actually makes less than if we'd add an assistant. They would make more, an assistant high school coach.
The freshman.
And I believe, as Jimmy, I did speak with Mr. Lopez because just the whole thing with the coaching, and he talked to a couple of the high school principals. I believe that those assistant, I think you've probably talked about this before, that those head freshman coaches work with those freshman players, regardless if they're rostering a team or not. And I think there seems to be a need for that if there's a lot of freshmen coming out for the team.
Well, if there's a lot of freshmen coming out there, and there ought to be a lot of games being played.
You're right.
Mrs. Sutler,
Sure, Jimmy, go right ahead.
well, I know this is always very controversial. My passion has been football, and I know that we're all about doing what's right. And I'm not suggesting anything other than the fact that the freshmen, you're right. A lot of times they'll start out to try to have a team, and they do not. You have to have probably in the neighborhood of 20 kids to really put a natural progression of freshman team and to be able to play. And football is a very controversial sport because it's such a high impact sport. If you have a freshman, which I have had a freshman play football, if you have him playing football, maybe not a freshman team, but he's going to be participating against seniors. I want a coach that's designated specific to him to make sure that he's using proper technique, that he's not being thrown into a drill that he shouldn't. Because all it would take is one major injury for one of our kids in practice, and we don't have that oversight. And we'll wish we would have had freshman coaches, keeping an eye on them. Now that's my opinion. I've spent a lot of time coaching. Technique is so important. There's so much with the concussion protocol and everything that we're doing. I would strongly suggest that we make sure that we keep intact, a position that keeps an eye on those kids, so that they want to continue to progress forward and play football, and so that we're not putting them at risk for potential injury. That's just me as far as a football coach, a dad that's had kids playing, and watching parents that are really apprehensive about even allowing their kids to participate in high school football.
Jimmy, I'll just give my version again on this. So it's not that I don't want the kids protected in the way that you're hammering it out. The complaint is that Bridgeport, let's say, has a head coach, 2 assistants, and a freshman coach. That freshman coach is actually a freshman coach. He's going to games. He's actually working. The problem is from all the other schools, from Bridgeport, which I agree with them, is all the other schools have freshman coaches, no freshman team. So their head coach actually gets 3 assistant coaches out of this. I mean, to go out there and see if that freshman coach is actually just working with the freshmen, we're not going to police. But I'll tell you right now, I would almost guarantee you that's not happening. And the big complaint is, here's Bridgeport. They have a head coach and 2 assistants, because their freshman coach is actually working with a team. And then you have all the other schools with the head coach and 3 assistants. And that's been the complaint that's been brought to me, and I understand it. I also have watched the football programs, not like you, but I have seen that happen. I mean, my son was a freshman and he was playing against seniors, like you said. There was never a freshman coach. There was on paper, but there was never a freshman coach. You know what I mean? I saw that. And it was a whole different head coach and everything at RCB. That's not how it plays out the way you're saying. And that's why my biggest issue has been the labeling of a freshman coach when it's not playing out that way, and it doesn't make it fair across the board. I mean, I'm not saying eliminate a person. I'm saying we need to retitle that position to be honest about it.
She said,
Is what I'm saying.
retitle the position possibly.
Take the label freshman
Yeah.
coach off. If they have enough freshmen, one of them coaches a freshman team. If they don't have enough, then he's an assistant coach. I mean, if that's the way you're going to do it. I mean,
Well,
I don't care. You never can have enough bodies to help a team. I agree with that. But I just say, don't say we've got a freshman coach when we all know it's a farce, except in Bridgeport and all. So let's just make it another assistant coach. And if they have a freshman team or freshman games, he coaches the freshman or he helps with the JV. It'd be the sophomores and freshmen playing in the JV games. You know, so.
The only question I would have is, do we run into any classification issues after the fact of personnel season? Taking someone, making them a freshman coach in the beginning of the year, and then automatically, if there's no freshman team, then we knock them down to assistant coach?
It would go to pay.
Yeah.
The head coach could.
Still paying for the year.
But the pay, you can't.
The freshman coach is paid less than the
You
assistant.
can't make him a freshman coach. You have to make him an assistant coach.
But the assistant coaches are paid more than the freshman coaches.
That would be the.
It would be a small amount.
But you can use them any way you want. The head coach can use their assistants any way they see fit.
Yeah, but how do we get around changing the classification after personnel season?
You don't.
Yeah, you can't.
So
And when there's not a freshman team, they still get paid.
We either have to hire no freshman coaches right now, or we have to hire assistant coaches and then designate them as freshman coaches at another time. I mean, we can't get around it.
They've already been hired. They've already been hired.
What?
Well, if that's the case, then I think Bridgeport should have another assistant.
They do.
They're the largest school. They have the most players. His coach, their head coach should have 3 assistants, just like any other high school.
You know, guys, if this is some resolution for you all, we can pool. We don't have to. I mean, football season doesn't start until August, obviously. To pool the freshmen, and we were just discussing that between ourselves. Pool the freshmen and then bring back at a later date if we need to.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm okay with it, but I'm just saying, we'll be bringing back, let's bring him back, not as a freshman coach. Let's bring him back as an assistant coach. The coaches ought to be listed. There ought to be.
And then assign them to a freshman team if that's what the head coach wants to do.
But there ought to be a head coach, a number 1 assistant, number 2 assistant, number 3 assistant, and if there's a 4th one, he's on the lower end of the pay scale. He's getting experience, and then he becomes a freshman coach.
Hey, Doug, I think you're right on that. Why can't we just have the 1, 2, 3, like you said? And if they have a team in the fall, they can then put in for a freshman specific coach. If they have a team, like you said, Doug. I mean, we don't have to hire the freshman coach right now.
She said just wait.
Or do wait.
Just wait until they have a team and then we'll post them and hire. If
Well,
they
I
have a
think
team.
that
Are we allowed to do
they're
that?
not entitled. They're
Does
not
that have to be done? We have to do this during personnel season.
That's what I'm thinking.
Well, they
We
have
already
that.
have a contract. We don't have to, on this one, we have to renew.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have to. Okay, hey, what's the desire of the board, Mr. President?
So I gather the desire of the board is to increase a coach at Bridgeport High School and not allow freshman coaches unless they have a freshman team.
And we could make that designation you can always post at any time. So let me reiterate, at least I understand what you're saying, is that we leave it as, we do not take the freshman coach at Bridgeport. There's not only a freshman coach, there's an assistant freshman coach.
Well, there's also on this agenda, there's one for Lincoln and an assistant coach for Lincoln as well.
Yeah. So
on this agenda, assistant coach for Lincoln.
Is it your desire? Is it the board's desire to remove those by vote of the board, and then review at the appropriate time the necessity? Am I hearing you right?
Yeah.
Can we vote on coaches next meeting?
We could do that. But why don't we just, Mr. President, if it breaks the backlog here or the issue, why don't I just recommend, Mr. President, you take the action, recommend removing the freshman coach until such time as we can determine need.
Yeah. So
quite honestly, I don't want to hire a freshman coach. We don't even know if we're going to have a football season. I know that seems.
Yeah, we don't even know that. So I think we have some room there.
We were supposed to have a meeting on this. I mean, can we not just pull all coaching positions till we talk instead of doing this right now? I mean, we actually had decided to have a special meeting or a committee, I thought. I know Corona has
that wasn't on actual positions. That was on coaches' pay.
Well, that's pretty much what we're looking at as well, what we're going to pay and how many. I'm just saying, why don't we pull them and just have one get together meeting or something to think this through? And Gary's right. Wonder if we don't have any football teams.
Well,
then that would mean we're not having any school either.
Yeah.
That's right, but we still have to pay the football coaches,
so
correct?
It would invalidate every coach that we have on this agenda here right now anyway.
You want to pull the two freshmen or all the freshmen coach until such time as we can make a recommendation.
Until the next board agenda.
Until the next board agenda, which is April 21st. There's personnel on it. Perhaps we can do that, Mr. President, if that's your desire.
Well, what about assistants? Because if we change the labeling, why don't you just keep the head coaches and that's it?
Anything associated.
We're talking about freshman coaches at this point. Just pull the freshman coaches.
And
the best thing to do, and then talk about it at the next meeting.
That's what we'll do, if that's your desire, Mr. President, and the remainder of the board.
Well, I agree.
Is there a motion to amend the personnel agenda acceptance, pulling the freshman football coaches off of the agenda?
Freshman and assistant.
Assistant freshmen off the agenda.
That's my understanding.
Any freshman, okay, yeah.
So moved.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Doherty. Is there a second?
Okay, wait a second. Well, I heard Doug in the background. So we're removing freshmen and assistants, football coaches.
Freshman assistant football coaches.
Oh, and freshman assistant, not regular assistant.
Not regular assistant.
Okay.
There's an assistant freshman, Kristen, and there's a head freshman and there's assistant freshman. So what we're doing is pulling those off for further discussion at the April 21st meeting.
Okay, the only thing I want to bring up before we go on with this, after our discussion, are we going to change the other labels? I mean, that's a possibility we were just discussing.
That would be, I guess, the special committee that we wanted to put together.
But I'm just saying on the assistants, if we go assistant 1, 2, 3, but we just now hire an assistant, I mean, how will that work? That's the only reason why I said I think any assistant other than the head coach is what I'm saying until we relook at this. Because if you hire, you can't go back, right?
I'm trying the wisdom of what you're saying, Kristen. The only thing is the question is are the freshmen and the assistant freshmen. I didn't realize there's some sort of concern about the regular assistants.
No, there isn't. What I'm saying is like, Doug had said, like assistant one, assistant two, assistant three. I mean, I'm just asking, would that affect that if we just right now hire assistant coaches? If we want to like redo that, instead of having a freshman, have assistant one, assistant two, assistant three. And if you have a team, you see what I'm saying? I'm just worried about getting an assistant and we change the name of it, is all I'm saying.
It's a legitimate question, and it's a good question. If the board takes the action, at least is my understanding, that to remove the assistant freshman and freshman coaches, and that's it, that will give us some flexibility as to how we address that in the future. That will not in any way infringe upon the existing assistant coaches, which it's my understanding there's no controversy about. If that's your question.
No, I just didn't know if we were going to do the relabeling. I'm just talking once again at the labeling.
The relabeling part is the first time we've brought this up. So
yeah.
I don't think that this is the appropriate time to talk about relabeling assistant coaches because this is the first time it's been brought up. So
yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. It is the first time. And if you hire and we do meet, will that affect it? Is all I'm saying.
The board has broad authority on how they make that determination. If this board takes action to hire, which is we're proposing, then that's board action, and that's what it'll reflect. But by removing the assistants, that gives us the flexibility how we want to handle the assistants.
Okay, and something probably for next year anyway. But
yeah, and I think
was just trying to protect us.
We don't have that kind of time frame. Whatever we would do, we'd have to put it in place next year. I mean, as relates to this relabeling and everything. Okay.
Yeah, I was just trying to give the board a little bit more safe, a little bit more wiggling room if needed.
Yeah,
hey, Dr. Manchin?
Yes.
Can we also, because they're not paid, take a look at this volunteer assistants that also join these staffs, as to how many, the rules can say you're allowed one, but a lot of teams end up with about 47 people on the sideline and they're all volunteers.
Now, I think from what I gather that we have clearly designated.
We have a regulation.
Now, if somebody we will hold the principal's county, and Mr. Lopez, you still there? Jimmy?
Yes, Doc. Yes, Doctor.
You okay, buddy?
Yeah, I'm good. Are you?
You didn't fall. Hey, Jimmy. Jimmy is part of his responsibilities is athletics. So I will ask Jimmy and I to address that. Again, what was the question?
How many volunteers are
volunteers? No, the volunteers. We have talked to the principals, Doug. We have designated number of volunteers that are appropriate and allowed. If they exceed that, which it's not my understanding that anybody is exceeding it, Mr. Lopez, we will monitor that and clearly say that you're not to be assisting as a volunteer. We have very, very clearly delineated language how it addresses that, Doug. If there's something specific that I'm not aware of that somebody is abusing that, please let us know.
Well, I'm just saying, I think we need to know how many volunteer assistants are at each school.
I think,
in other words, if Bridgeport comes back and says we have 2 volunteer assistants,
I get take approval.
As long as it's,
they have to have background checks and everything, Doug. So you're right that if they don't have a background check, they are not a volunteer coach. So clearly,
that's the thing that I concern myself is because you look and all of a sudden everybody says, well, he's a volunteer. He's a volunteer. Well, have they been cleared to be,
if the board doesn't take the action, you will see those. If the board does not take the action, they are not a volunteer coach in Harrison County. And in fact, principals will clearly have been instructed that they are not to have. And to be honest with you, it helps them out. We'll take that burden off of them because everybody dad wants to, they think they're a visitor
Exactly.
party, they want to help,
Exactly.
they want to come and help. And we've given them some cover by telling them, hey, I can't have but one, or I can't have but two, because then you have to have a background check, and that allows the principal to tell them no.
Okay. And
By the way,
because I
do
looked
they
over
get
at one
cards
guy
like us?
last year. I looked over at Bridgeport's sideline last year.
I'm sorry.
Dr. Martin calling plays. And I asked somebody, how could he call plays? They said, well, he's a volunteer.
No, that's no, Doug, I understand what you're saying. If the principal has not designated them and the board has not taken action, they are not a volunteer.
Okay.
And as such, that opens us up to some liability issues.
You better believe it.
But your point is well taken. So we'll double check, make sure. But we have there's language that clearly states that you can't have any additional volunteers other than what's prescribed for in policy.
You know, Doc, we could actually, like, say if Bridgeport is allowed to have 3 volunteers, let's say all the schools, maybe we should issue them not key access, but passes for the fields that they have to show, like you know, all the teachers have, just not key access that says football volunteer.
Yeah.
And you have to have that to get on the field.
Hey, Doug, and for the entire board, this is a regulation that exists and was established May 20th, 2009, and revised June 11th, 2013. So this is, we're operating under these regulations. It's subsection 6, 1 volunteer coach per team is permitted as recommended by the school principal and approved by the county board of education. If a program has a varsity, junior varsity, and a freshman team, a total of 3 volunteer coaches are permitted.
Okay.
1 for each team. Middle school track teams may have a second volunteer coach per team due to increased supervision needs.
Okay.
So that is language that we've been operating on and we will continue to operate on. Hey, Kristen, here's a subsection 5, volunteer coaches do not receive WVSSAC courtesy and identification cards.
They do not?
They do not.
No, do not.
No, I was talking about Harrison County Board of Education, like I have with my picture.
That's all right. That would be-
Enter the gate. They are volunteers that are approved and go through the board, and the principal should be issued one of those, of course, without key access, to be on the field. A photo ID, I think that's good protection anyway.
Well, whatever standards we utilize for accepting and getting a background check on volunteers, that might suffice. But if additional photo ID, if that's the desire of this board, certainly whatever the desire of this board is, we'll adhere to.
Because like Doug said, people just say, hey, I'm a volunteer, and walk right in, and there's so many people on the sidelines. It's dangerous almost.
Well, and I don't disagree with you. And like I said, and Doug knows this, we all know this, who's been around a lot of athletics, a lot of particularly fathers who think their son is the next Tom Brady. They would be on the sidelines, and I've seen kids come off the sideline looking towards their dad instead of their coach, which infuriate me. No, I agree with you. And we've talked about this, Doug, and members of the board. This is not the first time we broached this about volunteers. I think we got this under control, but we'll continue to monitor it, okay?
Yeah, just as long as we have a list, you have a list, and you know that the ones.
It'll be board approved.
There, yeah, they have to be board approved, but you have a list of them, you know, and the principals understand these 3 are approved as volunteers that you've selected, and then not 10 other people are also volunteers.
Yeah, well, that's really sideline. The principal has at their own specific school control the sidelines. I mean, you got a bunch of people there. Everybody off. Get out. Let's go. And that's really is the purview of the principal of the specific school. You got 30 people standing on the sideline. Whoa, who all's here? Let's go clean up the sideline. And you're right. It can get a little bit out of control. People just used to walking on the sideline And after a while, we have to clean it all up. You should only have the chain gang and the assistant and one volunteer, and that's it. And probably a doc.
Yeah.
Other than that, that's it.
Physical therapist there too. I mean,
And you know, Doc, I honestly believe, I know you're saying that it's the principal that needs to go in there. You know, when we enact stricter guidelines like this, I 100% believe it's a huge help to the principal, because although it's his position, you could also have about 5 huge donors
Yeah, you're
on
right.
the field that you don't want to upset after they just handed you a couple $1,000s. So by us enacting stricter regulations, I think principals would appreciate that for their own usage.
Well, now, depends how much money they get, Chris. Now, come on now. Just kidding.
But you know what I'm saying? I mean, it would be nice for them to have us supporting them
That all
instead
the
of
time.
saying it's up to them.
Particularly when I was in McDowell County, when in doubt, just blame it on Manchin. And they got that down pretty good. So if that gives them a little cover, by all means. But I think your points, particularly, I've been on a lot of sidelines, and I am on the sidelines at games. There is a lot of people on the sidelines, and I agree, Doug. But we'll continue to work with. I'll get Mr. Lopez with the principals to assure that the sanctity of the sideline a little bit or a little greater.
And you gotta eliminate these kids on the sideline, these little kids. You know,
And there's a bunch of
kid got his leg broke at Robert C. Byrd. I mean, got a terrible break. He's now playing football now. It got better, but I mean, it was a terrible break because he was a little kid over on the sideline, you know, watching the game, watching his brother or whatever. And
I remember that.
You know, and
Yeah,
it was a terrible.
That's
break.
tragic, and not only that, over the years I've seen cheerleaders with their backs turned to the field, which never get drilled. So that's a good point.
Okay.
Doug and everybody, we hear you. And by the way, Mr. President, did the board take the action? There's been no action taken yet. Is that correct?
No, we were in discussion, and the motion on the table is to accept the personnel agenda, excluding freshman football coaches and freshman assistant football coaches. So with that being said, is there, I'll take a vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Yeah, I seconded.
Yeah, Mr. Hamrick seconded.
I think it's been moved and seconded.
And seconded, yes.
And the appropriate thing is to vote. Okay.
And we just took a vote, and if are there any nays? Nope. All right. Therefore, personnel agenda has passed. So now we go to our favorite part of the meeting, adjournment.
So moved.
Mr. Hogue has made the motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Hamrick has seconded the motion.
Can we have discussion? Or shouldn't we, like, if we're going to get together and sort of go over these things like before, Frank, I think you actually suggested it. Should we set a type of meeting to go over this coaching stuff since we just eliminated those?
Well, we could put that on the next agenda. I'll talk to Dr. Manchin and have them put that on the next agenda, or we'll come up with a special meeting and incorporate that with the inclusion of the committee for the pay scales.
And Mr. President, just point of clarification here, we did not eliminate, we just simply removed.
Pulled them off the agenda. We did not eliminate, just were pulled off the agenda.
Right.
All right, Mr.
I
President.
just didn't know if we had to set a meeting to do that, if there was a time, you know, since we just discussed all.
Set a special meeting after the next meeting.
We can set a special meeting after the next meeting. I can bring it back on the next agenda. I'll talk to Dr. Manchin and we'll set up the agenda, and then we'll notify everyone what we're going to do.
Okay.
All right, Mr.
Hogue. Children of peace, go in peace.
God bless you.
In favor,
Thank you.
saying aye.
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye,
We're adjourned.
everybody.
Well, until we meet again.
Till we meet again. May God hold you in the palm of his hand.
All right.